Welcome to Climate Watch. I'm Ben Tracy. Our modern lives depend on industries like construction, farming, manufacturing, and transportation. But all of these are significant contributors to planet-warming greenhouse gases. Today, there is more carbon in the atmosphere than there has been in the last 4.2 million years. Our oceans are rising 2 times faster than just a decade ago, and could rise as high as 6.6 feet by the year 2100. Antarctic sea ice hit its lowest level ever. And 2023 was the hottest year on Earth since global record-keeping began in 1850. So today we take a look at initiatives from across the country to lessen the impacts of carbon dioxide and methane on our planet. We explore the use of mass timber to build large structures from wood, instead of using materials that emit a lot of CO2. And I catch up with Bill Gates to learn about the companies his breakthrough energy organization invests in to create more climate-friendly solutions to power our world. But we begin with an environmental group tracking methane gas polluters from the air with a highly specialized plane. Methane is invisible to the naked eye, and it's the second biggest contributor to climate change, 80 times more powerful at warming the planet in the short term than carbon dioxide. The Environmental Defense Fund is working on creating a $90 million satellite, funded in part by Jeff Bezos' Earth Fund, that will detect methane leaks from around the world 24/7. I sat down with senior climate scientist Alyssa Acco to learn more. Inside a hangar in Boulder, Colorado, this appears to be just another fancy private jet.
You can always pull these graphs up.
But it's actually filled with scientists on a mission to help save the planet. They take to the skies to hunt down an invisible gas, seen here with infrared cameras, which is rapidly heating up the atmosphere and fueling some of the worst impacts of climate change. What exactly is methane?
Methane is a greenhouse gas. It is the second largest contributor to climate change, and it accounts for more than a quarter of the warming that we're experiencing today.
Alyssa Acco is a senior climate scientist at the Environmental Defense Fund. She says methane emissions mainly come from leaks during fossil fuel production, from the digestive tracts of cows when they burp, and from rotting food in landfills. And here's why it matters. Methane is like carbon dioxide on steroids, 84 times more powerful at warming the planet. But unlike CO2, which can stay in the atmosphere for centuries, methane only lasts for about a decade.
Reducing methane emissions is the single fastest opportunity we have to slow down the rate of warming.
If we're able to cut these methane emissions, what impact would that have on warming?
We have the technologies available to cut methane emissions globally in half over the next 10 years. And if we do that, then we can slow down the rate of global warming by 30%.
Slowing warming could mean fewer destructive storms, wildfires, and heat waves, and slower melting of the world's ice sheets, which is causing sea levels to rise.
We need to know how much methane is being emitted, from where, and by whom.
So you actually detect the methane through the bottom of the plane?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's where the plane comes in.
Up front is actually methane air itself. And if you look up, you can actually see 2 lenses.
The scientists call it methane air. They've been flying it over what's known as the Permian Basin, more than 86,000 square miles in Texas, the largest oil field on the planet. Special sensors on the plane detect methane leaks from oil and gas facilities on the ground. According to the EDF, those industries account for about a quarter of all human-made methane emissions, and knowing where the leaks are can help in identifying the polluters and holding them responsible. A new $90 million satellite called MethaneSat is being built by the Environmental Defense Fund, in part with money from Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' Earth Fund. They plan to launch it next year atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Once in orbit, it will find and map methane leaks around the world 24 hours a day.
This is the structure.
Steve Stegg is CEO of Blue Canyon Technologies, which is building the satellite, including the solar panels that will act as its wings to power its flight.
And so what we're seeing here, this is pretty much as big as it is, and then the solar arrays come out from there.
That's exactly right. This is the size of it. The solar arrays will extend out about 10 to 12 feet on each side of the satellite.
So this will absolutely be a game changer.
Reducing planet warming emissions has been Alyssa Akko's life work since a trip to Greenland during college.
I watched as ice was melting off of glaciers and just rushing out into the ocean.
And she now has another, more personal reason to work even harder: a 4-year-old daughter.
And it really worries me what the climate will be like when she's my age. I look at my daughter every day and I just want the best for her. And a huge part of that is the world that we're leaving behind.
A world we still have a chance to save. Up next, how capturing carbon from the atmosphere could slow climate change. Carbon capture technology removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and stores it in an effort to mitigate its effects on the planet. I spoke with the CEOs of 2 startups on a mission to do just that. We also talked about the cost and just how well it actually works. So this is where carbon goes to die?
Exactly.
This field in central Arkansas will soon be a graveyard for planet-warming pollution.
It's going into the ground and it will stay here forever.
Barclay Rogers is CEO of Graphite, a startup that takes leftover material from timber and rice mills and locks away the carbon dioxide that plants naturally remove from the atmosphere by turning it into bricks, wrapping them up, and burying them in the ground.
We're taking the carbon captured by plants and keeping it out of the atmosphere for 1,000 years or more.
So you got a lot of space here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Graphite plans to turn this empty warehouse into the world's largest carbon removal facility, eventually removing 50,000 tons of CO2 per year. That's like taking 10,000 cars off the road. American Airlines is paying Graphite to offset some of the pollution from its flights. This brick of dead plants and trees is really going to be a solution?
It's going to be a very big solution.
To avoid the worst impacts of climate change, scientists say we need to stop burning fossil fuels and switch to cleaner forms of energy, but also need to remove billions of tons of carbon dioxide we've already put up into the atmosphere.
This is not a nice to have anymore, this is a must have.
Shashank Samala runs Heirloom Carbon. It just opened the nation's first commercial carbon capture plant in Central California. The automated facility stacks trays of limestone 40 feet high, allowing the rock to suck carbon dioxide from the air like a sponge. In nature, that takes months. Heirloom's technology does it in just days. Carbon that might have come out of somebody's tailpipe is now being sucked down into this.
Yeah, exactly.
Heirloom says its pilot plant removes just 1,000 tons of CO2 per year, but plans to build facilities that capture 1,000 times more. Carbon removal is often knocked for being too expensive, but given the climate crisis we now face, Samala says it's an essential part of the solution.
We need to start turning back the clock on climate change. You know, what carbon removal offers us is the closest thing to a time machine.
There's an unlikely and more eco-friendly material being used to construct everything from museums to high-rises and now a $2 billion airport. Mass timber is made by pressing and bonding together large pieces of wood to create a stronger and more durable building material. Proponents call it a greener alternative to concrete and steel, but critics say it's greenwashing. Jeff Glore sat down with the president of Timber Lab, a mass timber construction company.
Wow. Whoa. Jeez. That is a lot of wood.
Walking into Portland, Oregon's new airport
Pretty wild.
is like seeing a version of the future, firmly rooted in the past.
9 acres over us.
Correct.
All wood.
All wood.
Curtis Robenhold is the executive director of the Port of Portland, the man who's led a $2 billion project to build this airport.
It's pretty exciting, and you can start to see it all coming together now.
The dream is to make this more than just a place to take off or land.
You want people to come here just to hang out?
Would not hurt. The idea of the space in front of us here is sort of auditorium seating where you have more of a community space, and how that's used, we'll have to see how that plays out, but it's to be more of a community space rather than a transactional space.
All of this is possible because of mass timber, which is not all that different than the kind of wood you find at the store, except it's been bonded and pressed into huge pieces, used as walls and floors that can be installed all at once, which for one dramatically speeds up construction time.
What is this?
This is cross-laminated timber. Like if you went into Lowe's or Home Depot, you see all the 2x6s. This is just a whole bunch of 2x6s glued together.
Is this the future?
Absolutely.
Chris Evans is the president of TimberLab, one of the firms pioneering the technology. TimberLab manufactured the airport's roof. Mass timber is increasingly being used in museums, community centers, office buildings, even this 25-story condo in Milwaukee.
When you mention this to people, they're like, why would you build a skyscraper of wood or of an apartment building?
Yeah.
It's going to burn down.
Yeah, that's the first reaction. And honestly, the first, 8 years ago when I was first introduced to it on an office building, that was my first reaction. Once you really start to understand what it is and you don't just think of it as wood, you think of it as a highly sophisticated structural system that has this natural fire resistive quality to it, then you start to see that, oh man, this is a game changer.
TimberLab says today's treated mass timber can be as strong as steel and more fire resistant. To prove it, they do testing like this. Never mind the aesthetic advantage.
If we think about the workplace, nobody wants to go to work in a 9-foot acoustic tile ceiling with a bunch of cubicles and everything, some version of white or tan out there, right? That's
we want beauty.
Yeah, there's movies based on that type of work environment.
You're going to start quoting Office Space?
No, I won't.
When done right, advocates say mass timber can be a win-win long-term for everyone.
You can actually look up on the roof and you can identify where each of these pieces came from. It's a system called track and trace, and the folks who did it, honestly, it's the first time it's been done. It's really astonishing. I think it's something we're going to see in the future around wood and increasing use of wood.
It has to be more expensive that way.
You know, we thought it was going to be a lot more expensive, and I would say it was marginally more expensive, but really it's worth it.
Some critics wonder whether right now it is worth it. They say too many mass timber projects today are a form of greenwashing, often relying on irresponsible harvesting methods.
Every time I see a clear-cut site, it looks apocalyptic.
Yeah, I mean, and they take a while to grow back to any semblance of a forest.
Sean Stevens is the executive director of Oregon Wild. He took us to a forest 90 minutes outside Portland. The timber from this site was used for a project in Washington state that was billed as climate friendly.
Was it climate friendly?
You really can't call clear cutting, especially at this scale, climate friendly.
Do you think skyscrapers made of mass timber are a good idea?
Can a big mass timber building be built and have it be green? Yes. But right now, mostly mass timber is being used as a way to greenwash existing bad practices.
Critics of mass timber say it's greenwashing.
I wouldn't say it's greenwashing at all. American forests are producing more timber than we're consuming. You know, a natural part of forest growth is to have some devastation, landslides, wildfires. Things happen where the forest regenerates and grows.
But this isn't natural, it's man-made if you're clear cutting.
Absolutely, and I'm not a proponent of saying, yes, go clear cut. What I'd say is subscribing to sustainable forestry practices that are understood and known. Those are in alignment with long-term forest health.
Can you ensure that the timber used here in this mass timber is responsibly harvested?
Absolutely, yeah, without a doubt.
The Portland Airport acknowledges they did get some of their wood from smaller clear cuts, which many forestry experts say are currently unavoidable. But there are ways to mitigate the harm, like allowing longer growth of trees, doing smaller cuts, and leaving a larger percentage of the trees untouched, which the airport says they did. As new, beautiful mass timber structures push higher every day, builders are being pushed to source them the right way.
You think this is going to be a big deal in every state?
There's more projects in the Northeast now than there are in the Pacific Northwest as far as like coming online or being designed. And that's surprising to me. I couldn't believe that. And now you're really starting to see this spread across the whole country.
After the break, Bill Gates' push for a more climate-friendly future. Welcome back. Co-founder and former Microsoft CEO Bill Gates started his Breakthrough Energy initiative in 2015 with the aim to make everything from energy to clothing production greener. I met up with him in Texas at the Infinium plant, a startup creating ultra-low carbon fuels that could one day replace diesel and jet fuel.
When you replace it, you open those things up.
When you spend the day with Bill Gates, the first thing you notice
What is that?
is that he asks a lot of questions.
What type of uptime is realistic? Do you want like 6, 10, 12?
We met up with him in Corpus Christi, Texas, as he learned about a startup called Infinium.
You know, I'm a software guy. I wasn't even that good in the chemistry lab, so.
Infinium built what it calls the world's first commercial e-fuels facility. It uses waste carbon dioxide from nearby oil and gas refineries and converts it into ultra-low carbon fuels that may replace diesel for long-haul trucking and jet fuel for airplanes.
If they weren't using the CO2 to make this fuel, that's CO2 that would just be warming the planet.
Right. And so this has all the benefits of fuel as we know it today without the emissions.
What is this vehicle running on?
So this vehicle is running on our e-fuels, net zero carbon fuel from our e-fuels facility.
It also powered our ride around the plant.
This plant is literally 100th the size of what the one they're dreaming of making.
Infinium got $75 million in funding from Breakthrough Energy, an organization Gates founded in 2015 that's raised more than $2 billion to support about 120 climate tech startups. They're trying to transform everything from how we make cement and clothing to how we power our lives, and even how we turn the pollution we can't eliminate into bricks that are buried underground.
Breakthrough Energy only funds things that can make a significant impact on emissions.
So many of these things, people hear about them and they say, that sounds really cool, but can they actually do this at the scale that we need?
It can happen. I mean, this is much harder than we think. It's not like software. And the hardest part is not actually the breakthroughs in the lab. That's been going very well. The hardest part is when you take that and actually build these big physical plants. This is a particularly large reservoir under this King Ranch.
One of those big plants will be built here on the largest cattle ranch in Texas. It will be a direct air capture facility, which sucks in planet-warming carbon dioxide and buries it underground.
This term, direct air capture, means that they're just pulling it out of the air.
This facility in Iceland is currently the world's largest operating plant, removing about 4,000 tons a year, not even a drop in the CO2 bucket. But a new one being built in West Texas called Stratos is expected to remove 500,000 tons per year.
This is really the hub of CO2 enhanced oil recovery.
And the one here on the ranch could eventually capture 1 million tons. They are being developed by oil and gas giant Occidental, which plans to build 100 of them with the help of federal tax credits. Vicki Holub is the company's CEO.
We're the only company doing it at a large scale.
But Occidental is doing this so it can sell so-called carbon offset credits to other companies, creating a new revenue stream. It will also take the CO2 captured at its Stratos plant and inject it back into the ground to push out more oil, a product Holub argues is environmentally friendly, even calling it net zero oil.
You know, your detractors look at this and say, this all sounds like a clever bit of greenwashing.
We are developing a technology that the world needs. We have to do that.
Critics and scientists worry that using direct air capture this way will prolong oil production, leading to more planet-warming emissions, just as world leaders have pledged to transition away from fossil fuels.
The real cynical view is that you don't really care about reducing the emissions, that this is about kind of future-proofing your business, that you can make money off selling carbon offsets, and at the same time you can use CO2 to pump more oil.
we do need money coming in because we do have shareholders. And so the way that we are approaching this mitigation of climate change is in a way that does provide value for our shareholders.
Carbon capture won't solve the entire problem. It's part of our arsenal of tools.
Gates says the oil and gas industry can be part of the solution if they use their expertise to reduce emissions. He personally pays carbon capture companies $9 million a year to offset his own pollution, a perk of being one of the richest people on the planet.
I have a plane, I have a huge carbon footprint.
He knows most people can't afford to do that, which is why he believes technology and American innovation is the key to combating the climate crisis.
Some of these things will not succeed, and that's why it's great to have multiple technologies that are showing promise.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news, stream us right here on CBS News 24/7, available across all platforms. Thanks for watching Climate Watch. I'm Ben Tracy.